Okay, so we're gonna do command line based lab today using Windows 10 VM. The reason why we're using virtual machine is because when you log on to your desktop, you don't have administrator's privilege to run and execute some of the command, even though there are commands that are very simple where we're just looking at certain IP address and following its traffic. As we talked about in class today about ARP, so I give you a little bit more information about ARP here. There are a little bit more information about how ARP is used or the types of ARP. You got the proxy ARP, which is used on proxy devices. So proxy can be a middleman or a middle appliance, I should say, that's intercepting the traffic. You can also set it up as a way to filter. So for example, like you can send all your traffic through a traffic cop, and proxy is like that. That would monitor who's passing by. We have gratuitous ARP for administration purposes, where it would announce or update the IP to MAC information. And we already talked about reverse, where it would be MAC to IP. And then you have the inverse, which is going to use IP address to find the MAC address. And then it's going to use the MAC address to find the IP. So similar to what you have for the reverse. It is definitely an important type of protocol. So we are going to work with its table today. So the first part is to load your VirtualBox or your virtual machine. I have a typo here. Let me fix that. Okay. So first we are going to copy, right? Plug in your drive. Go to your drive. I have the SP drive. Find your Windows 10 CIS40A. Drag that to your desktop or copy paste it. That's going to take a few minutes. So here I have it on my desktop. Now you can go in here on your desktop, open up the folder, and then double click the blue file, which loads the VirtualBox file into your VirtualBox player. Okay, so you can do it this way, or you can add it through the app. My instruction for you is to go to the VirtualBox app, find that on your Windows search bar, and then you're going to add it to the playlist here. So click add, close that little prompt, go to desktop where your folder was copied, open up the subfolder, and then click the blue box file. And so here I am. Now, if you need to change any settings, like speed it up, give it more RAM, right? Make sure that it is in your playlist here, and then click settings, go to system, give yourself 8 gig of RAM, so 8,000 megabyte, then processor tab and change that. It's already at quad, but you can give it more if you like. So quad is good. Okay. Again, settings, and then go to system, change the RAM to 8,000 and then the processor to 4. Click OK. And then once we are happy with what we have, we're going to go ahead and click start. Now, when you're using command prompt and PowerShell, make sure that before you click it to open, right, I tell you to right click and then select run as. Or when you click it in Windows 10 or 11, it gives you the menu. Make sure that you use administrator privilege. Okay, so administrator, because there are times that you are going to modify the cache, and without that privilege, you won't be able to do much.
If you don't do that, as long as it still shows user/administrator, you're still good though, right?
Yeah. Okay. But you know, if you can't, if it tells you the error, right, you don't have administrator privilege, then that's because you didn't run it as administrator. Okay, so while that loads, and you can close the little thing on the right by clicking the small blue X. Okay, and then click in it. We're gonna go ahead and log in. So I just finished the first part. F. So to run as administrator, I'm gonna try to get this to show, and it's boo-boo because yeah. Are you running it from here? Running it from the thing. A lot of times, yeah, I don't run it from it. For some reason, VirtualBox here doesn't like running the drive, and you are modifying it. So the next time something drive are modified. So but that's done, open it from the okay? Yeah, just click add and then browse to desktop when that's done to option or three. You run it as administrator. Your ARP is not installed? Okay, let's open CMD and then we're gonna run as administrator. Click yes when you're prompted this. Yeah, so I think you're on the host system. It should show Windows. Yeah, see how, yeah, you're on it the regular. I'll try it right now. See how my path is different than yours? Because yours is still showing the users and then the CIS40A. Let me make my font a little bit bigger. Yeah, see how this path, when you're on as administrator, it should only show Windows System 32. And then if you do ARP-A, it should it should give you that, right? So I think something is funny with it. Let's turn it down.
I know. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's.
Okay, try it again once it loads. You can try to open it in on the administrator. Make sure you verify your password. Desktop.
ARP dash A dash. That one said,
Yes, so you have this one.
I thought I knew before. I never five says with P step two. So the ARP A. So. Well, it becomes secret first. I thought you have to last same. So it's basically the same thing. Yeah, actually get clear. So yeah. That's what it is. I don't know if it's what I know it's what it is. Or put in the IP. I'm already, yeah, I'm gonna be pretty. I'm waiting back.
It shows that.
Yeah,
but it's gonna go. Yeah, only initially that you previously reported it, but. Okay, any questions regarding ARP A? So when you do an ARP A, that's gonna show you all the cache information, right, for your active information. So it's gonna, it shows static type or, otherwise, but right now we only have static. And then we're gonna do an ARP B, right? So that's gonna clear all of this out. So if you want to flush or delete, you just do a -D. And then we're going to do an ARP G. So now what we're gonna do is we are going to have the information shown again, but because we flushed it from before, right? We got rid of some of the stale connection information, and now we only have 2 active. Okay, so yeah, definitely different from the original output with the A. And if you up arrow key, it's just gonna repeat the command previously. So I can try the A again, and the A is only gonna show the 2, same as the G, because remember I flush, I delete everything. So I had a longer table of information, I deleted it, I cleared it. And then I check the status again using the option G. I have 2 entry, and that is the same as the option A, which is for everything, all the active. Okay. So did that clear? Yeah, it did, right? I had a lot more entry, and then I deleted it, and then I have new or updated entries. Okay, so let's try our own IP address. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do ipconfig first to see our own IP address. And it's helpful, or actually you're gonna need to do ipconfig all. So ipconfig /all right here is gonna give you your IP address and your MAC address. So where do I go to get my information? I can go to my Ethernet adapter. That's what your Windows default is going to be. Right? So I have the IP address here. It should say the preferred. So I'm going to record that onto my command here. Right. So I want to put down my IP address from my computer. Is 172. So what did I do? I did an ipconfig /all, get your IP address. And how did I find that? I would see the preferred IP address here. So I have 172.49.0.100. So record that and then my MAC address. That will be your physical address. So my physical address is this. So 0800. And yours is gonna be different. 31 3D and 00. Okay, so I'm gonna take this information and I'm gonna try to set it. So first we need to find our MAC and IP. If you do the ipconfig /all, your MAC address should show on the line where it says physical address. The physical address. And then the IP address is the IP version 4 address, where it shows the preferred.
And when you're inputting it as r/s, is there a space in between your putting the IP address?
Yep. So you're gonna fill in your IP and your MAC here, right? Into the bracket area. Put your IP address in. And then find your MAC address from ipconfig. And you're gonna put that in. So to find your IP and MAC, do ipconfig /all. And see if you can statically enter that entry into your ARC table. If you're successful, right, it would take it. So in order to see it again, right, do an ARP-A to see if it's there after you input it. Or ARP-G. You can always delete certain entry or all the entry by using the prior command that you saw with the -D as in delete. Any question? Okay. Were we successful with setting static ARP entry? We should. So I need a screenshot for that. And then you can also use host name. And we should. I'm sorry? For number 6? So number 6, after you input, if it's successful, it's just gonna do in the next pop-up. So you need to do ARP-A to show that you're a complete ARP table. You know what I mean? Because you just added the entry. If there's no error, it's just gonna take it. Because you command line. Yeah, so you should be able to see the entry you put in, right? So once you find your IP, plug that into our dash. And then your IP address. Yeah, type that in, and then the MAC. You still have to.
Is there a space in between the X and
Yeah, so you need the MAC address. The MAC address. No bracket. What's the bracket?
Oh, that's all pictures on have too. They got the.
No brackets.
No bracket.
The bracket is just to indicate what you plug in. Okay, no bracket for the number 6. You just need to plug in that field. All tutorials do this. You guys don't know? All right. So I'm going to do ARP-S and then the IP address. My IP address is 172.49. So type yours in. .100 space. The MAC address 0. That's the physical address. So type yours in. 31 3D. Oops. So if nothing pops up, then you're good. You don't want error. So how do I go and look at the table again? This is when we apply the steps that we just learned, right? ARP-A. Okay. So with that, I see that there it is. I plug that in. You see? So after you after you set your entry, nothing, you don't want anything to show there, because if there's an error, it's going to tell you, oopsie, you have to input me again. So we're going to do ARP-S, our IP address, no bracket, and the MAC address following that. After that, we're going to display all the connection. Well, that's what I put in statically. I entered that in, right? It was already probably there, but earlier we only had two entry. I manually added the third one, and it shows the most, the recent one that should show up. So screenshot this, okay? And then host name. That's your desktop. I think this is just a default name, but whatever you set. So put down your host name, that's your computer name. How else can I find this information outside of command prompt? In system settings, right? Okay, then we're gonna do a path ping, and we're gonna do a loopback address. Oops. So it tells you that the path ping, it can follow the host by name or with the IP address. And it is very similar to the trace route process. Okay. But it's also, say it again. You have to type it and find out what the name is. Just do the command as it's instructed. Host name, one word. What do you see? Yeah. So every command that you do, you're going to see, and that's what's going to be the output, your answer for the question. Okay, so here with the path ping, you can see that it shows me my statistic and how it gets from point A to point B. So how many hops are shown? You count. Look at the hop column. 0 and 1. Okay?
So that just kind of one hop.
So hop 0, it's from my source. And then it reaches. So technically it is only 1, right? It has to come back to itself. We know that there's only 1, it is itself, but it might see it as potentially from source to destination. Yeah, that is a little bit confusing, but ultimately it's 1. If It's one system to itself, right? But logically, it listed as 0 and 1. Okay. Does the output contain your system name information? Yes, right? See? So can you do a pathping with the name? Sure. That's the whole point, is if you can do, you find the host name, you can also do a pathping with just the host name instead of the IP address. You can try that. Okay. Are we okay with 8? All right. So for 9, we're gonna do NBT stat -R. And this command shows how many NetBIOS named devices that has been resolved. And also the percentage, right? Sometimes this might take a little bit longer. It really depends on how the system response would be. So I don't really have any kind of NS or the broadcast. So it's resolved as 0. And then I have 3 as a broadcast. But when you try this on different system, like on the whole system outside, that's going to give you a little bit different connectivity on how the configuration would be. So I don't have any kind of name server connection. So I don't have NBT stat too much on here, right? So put down the value, that's percentage representation. For registered broadcast, I have none. I'm sorry, registered 3, and then for the name server is 0. So that was step 9. Any questions? Then for PowerShell, that's a different interface that we can issue commands. Make sure that we are on administrator. No, it's like closely. Because time wait is still, it's still gonna get the response. Remember what it says, there might be some latency. So there's just a delay. Right, and then, so like the system might time out eventually after that window is expired. And then it becomes closed. Yeah. So it logically, it sees 1, 1 and 2, right? 0 and 1. But technically, there's only one it is to itself. Yeah, so if you list 2 logical, that 2 entry, it sees it, the start to the destination, but technically it's only 1 to itself. Like if I tell my computer, go and come back, it's to itself. So yeah, technically it's 1, but it shows you that. Okay, any question regarding command prompt? We're gonna move to 10, and on is gonna be PowerShell. So there are some similarity in commands for PowerShell and command prompt. Like ipconfig is the same, host name is the same. There are some shared ones, but for any kind of execution with the function like obtaining information, PowerShell, you would use the get, right? This is the C# type of approach. So anytime in C for developer, when you're trying to get information, you're going to do a get. When you're trying to input information, you're going to do a set, a get and a set, right? So what we're going to do the important part in the next section of your lab is how you type. It's very important that we type things correctly. If you see a bunch of red, check your typo. Okay, there might be space. It is case sensitive. So make sure that we correct it. So when I'm done with my command prompt, I click the small X here. I don't want to close out my window. So close that. And then I would go to my Windows search bar on the bottom inside my virtual machine and search for PowerShell. And it's important that you run it as administrator because that way you have privilege. So when that comes up, click run as administrator. And PowerShell is shipped with Windows 7 and onward. Windows 10 and 11 automatically comes with it along with the server editions. 2012 and on, I think 2012. Yeah, 2012 you have to install 16 and onward. It comes with all edition for Windows Server. Click yes. And it's gonna come up like this. So let me change my font. You can go to the properties to do pop-up font change. So I can make it a little larger so you can see. So make sure that we check the path for admin. It should always show Windows System 32, not users, okay? So were you able to get everything back up? I forgot to check on your, I'm sorry. Okay. We're going to do a get neighbor CMD let. So this is getting a critical error. Mine just crashed. Let's boot it up. Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna do a get neighbor, and that's gonna allow you to get information from the on link for the IP address associated with the link layer, right? That's layer 2. And that layer 2 pertains to MAC or physical addresses. So what you can do is you can obtain the information using get neighbor. You can also create, like, you know how we did a set with the ARP? You can also create a neighbor cache entry by doing new net neighbor. I always want you to reference Microsoft information. So if you run into issues, and there are some modifications with different versions, so make sure that you check their PowerShell commands and instructions. Okay, so let me open up shell, PowerShell. Inside my virtual machine. Okay, so we're gonna do a get. G is not working. That works. Net neighbor. Now, sometime because I'm on a little bit larger font, but you can also have it format a certain way. It's gonna display like this by default. So here's your address information. So it's gonna give you the IP column, similar to what you've seen with command prompt. And then your link layer address, that's your physical or your MAC address. Okay. And then the state, right? Unreachable or permanent. Now it might get cut off because, you know, we condensed. But for the interface index, this is just a value that's given to the adapter or the interface that's used for the connection. So you can screenshot this. It's gonna give you the addresses and you can manually count these up. You know how many addresses are shown. Now, if you want to modify how you want to display this, and just like command prompt, if you up arrow key, that's going to give you the previous command and then you can just add to it, right? I don't want to type things repeatedly. So you want to do a pipe, and that's a shift above your enter key is the pipe. And then we are going to do a format list space dash property with the wildcard. And it's going to flush down and give you a lot of information like this, right? A lot of details. So coming back to the beginning, this is going to give you more detailed information about your, it's a property, sorry. So this is going to give you the property in a format table, very similar to the same information that you get from the previous, but listed a different way, right? Displayed a different way. So I have the interface, I have the IP address, the link layer address, the state, right? So this is going to give you more descriptive information about the specific cache entry. So if you want more detail, we want to do a format list like this. If you want it more of a summary, you just do a get net neighbor like that. Okay. It shouldn't say number 7, but just the previous command, it should say. Let me save this so I can fix the. So how should I answer that? You compare the difference between this display and the previous display, this display. How is this showing you? It's still the same information compared to this, right? It might crash, mine might crash again. More detail. You're gonna get more descriptive information for each of your cache entry or each of the
That's just there for number 7 it says what's the previous command on number 7.
or previous command. Yeah, the get neighbor. So if you use format list property, how is that different than just using it without it?
It's just, it gives more detail.
Yeah. So each entry is more in detail, right? But it can be very cumbersome to go through compared to a summary list. So you want to consider how the information is displayed and how you use that information is important. Okay. Then you can also use that to get your IP version 6. So go in step 12. We're going to look at version 6 address family. My mouse and keyboard. Sorry, I was getting issues with. Yeah, I lose mouse and keyboard integration. Let me attempt to restart my VM. Okay, so for the next part, you can do the address family in version 6. That's going to give you the suffixes for version 6 IP. Then we can also filter it to reachable versus non-reachable, right? Unreachable. So you can put in how you want to obtain the information as far as state from the interface. So you notice that we put the state here and then the adapter, which is our interface. Okay, so I'll try the other two. So we're gonna do get neighbor. So earlier when we looked at the get neighbor, we saw that there's version 4 and version 6 IP combined. Now we want to filter out only version 6 IP address. So you can specify your criteria in your options here for the command. Right? So as we talked about that last week, if you pay attention to how we looked at the IP addresses. So what suffixes do I have here? What's the beginning character here? Right? FF02, that's your suffixes. Okay. And we established that kind of narrowed down to what segment, right? Those systems or that system belong to. And then we would talk about like the CIDR, the slash, and all of that. Okay. So that's giving you how you can filter out version 6. And then I can also look at the state. So we would do a get neighbor and we would do a slash state. And reachable. And the same thing with unreachable. If you are researching that, you can also specify that filter, and then you do a get net adapter. Oh, let's see. I did not like that state reachable. Doesn't want.
Supposed to be red.
I'm sorry. No, it's not. Oh, yeah. I know why. Okay, so look at my list, right? I don't have anything reachable, so it's telling me that it cannot find it, right? Let's try permanent. Let's modify this. Yeah, so it's able to find some things that are permanent, but then there's some things that it's not. So I have some things that's up and some things that's not. So if you're telling it to find something that's not there, which is reachable, so in my list, I didn't have anything that's reachable, right? So that's why it's spitting out error. So it really depends on the state of your system. So you got to look at the state, right? So put in the criteria that matches the state if you want to filter that. So when I put in reachable, of course it says that, oh, it can't find anything because there's no value that's equal to that state. And then when I put in something that has permanent, it found some but it's not able to give me some detail with the interface index for others, right? So there's some stuff that it can spit out, and then there's some stuff that it has error with. So it really depends on the state that you want to specify, but it does tell me that my Ethernet adapter is up for the ones that it's able to pull. So I'll put that here. No. Depending on the state. This cache state. Only filter state that is listed. So,
Let me just tell me the entries.
say it again.
So, new entries are displayed.
Did you try it with, which one did you try? Did you try it with the reachable or the permanent? Yeah, so count up the one that shows in white. So I'm able to only display some, right, with the permanent state. And then you can try like, other state that if your system lists other state. So the reachable here is modifiable. Okay. It says error will occur if the list does not contain the specified state, such as reachable. Okay. So we're good with that. Next. It goes over UDP. Now we want to get TCP connection and UDP connection. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a get net TCP connection. So this would be the entire list of my system connection that would relate to TCP. And these are the ports that it uses. Right? So how many entries? You can count them up. I had modified the number a little bit. So you're gonna compare to the previous. Okay, so now we're gonna try to filter it with yeah. You should show that right here. So if you do the get net TCP connection, count this up. You have to output and look up at your own system, right? So if you have connected to another website, or that can be varied too. Then we're gonna filter by state again. So we want to, so if you don't have anything that's closed state or whatever, then, you can just put none. If you can't find it, it really depends on the state of your system too. Or close wait. We're gonna do a get net connection, and we're gonna do the state. And we want to look at establish. So if I check my syntax and everything is correct, an error like this, just like what we talked about before, nothing was established, right? So you got to look at your state on how your TCP connection would be. So let's try close wait. And nothing. So sometime if you don't have the proper state specified in your command. So if you can't, if it spits out error, you can just put none, right? No, zero found. So the whole point in filtering out your state, you just gotta make sure that your state is matched what is listed. It might be time wait, it might be close wait, it might be established. There'll be other things. So check your list and you can filter it down to what you want to see. Okay. Now on the next one, we're gonna do applied setting. And we want internet. So get connection, no SF net connection, objects found with the property applied setting equal to internet. Yeah, so I don't, so you see how I don't have internet connections also? Let me check my settings real quick. It has, yeah, this one has static IP, that's why that spits out false. Yours is the same, right? We did a lab with this one when we modified it, right? So coming back, right? I had to go in and check my IP address because when I look at a 172, I already know that that's a static IP. Because normally, if you're using NAT and you're connecting to RCCD network, you should get a 10 dot number, even on the wireless side. So this is a static IP we set. Now, if you want to put it back onto the network, go back and obtain it automatically. We talked about this before, right? In the Ethernet. So when you, I'm gonna try that real quick, actually. So I'm gonna put it back to have it obtain an IP address from RCCD network. Yep, it does it now, right? You see? That's the difference. Let's try. Boom. That. Okay. Is yours the same or you, if you're on static IP, you have to change it to dynamic IP and then you should be able to see this. So I see port 443, that's HTTPS, HTTP. So mostly like HTTPS and HTTP, right? How are you guys doing? Okay. Were you able to see this? Yeah. Yeah. Yours is, it depends on how what you connected to, right? Okay. All right. And then you can also look at your processes. Let me see if you should do this one. I didn't really have you guys do a PID. So 13B. Yeah, I had taken out that. So let's skip the 17.
You come for 16B.
So you look at the port that's here. Is there any PID information? So are there remote ports listed? So there's remote address, right? There's your local ports, and then the remote port is this column. Look at this column. And then you would write down. So if you're able to find the PID, then you're able to do 17. If not, yeah, if you don't have a PID, then you can't. So you don't have to do 17. We're gonna minus that.
Not doing 17.
Yeah, do 18. So we're gonna check on endpoints. So UDP endpoint, and this is gonna give you the statistic for UDP. That means that if your system is receiving UDP traffic via UDP ports, it's gonna be able to do that. So if it's able to give you the output, then you receive UDP traffic. Let's try. Get net UDP. Oops. Endpoint. And as we suspected, we are going to have TCP and UDP. So it gives me my local addresses and my local ports. So look at the local ports. So what's my IP address? Look up my IP address. Currently, I'm at 10.0.2.15. So the associated port that I'm using is this. But the loopback, it is still referring to my own system, right? So the entry that you see your IP address, I'm at 10.0.2.15. Then look at the associated port. It's actually multiple entries, so you got to look at all of them. Okay? That one, this one, this one, this one. You have to list the port, not just the count. The ports is in the local port column. That means that my system is using that port number, right, for connecting with UDP traffic. So look at your IP address and the associated port with the IP. You might have more than 4. It might be 2. It might be 1. It depends on how your system's connected or what it's connecting to. Okay. And then we're going to look at the loop back, right? It's the one with 127. So I have this one. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So look at yours with 127. Count those up. And then we're going to do the next one. Get net UDP setting.
Number 19.
Oh, did I? Yeah, we already have the 19. You can see the result from the last one and count it up, or you can filter it. So if you do the net UDP endpoint, let me go back to the endpoint, and then you can do a local address, and you can filter. Yeah. So when we filter, it's cleaner. It's gonna get rid of all the other ones and list the ones that you only want to filter. So this is how you can filter your endpoints. But you can also count up the ones from the prior list, the same information. Yeah, we said 4. Yeah, that's correct, 4. And then for 20, that's gonna give you the dynamic port range from the start port, right? So I didn't finish that, so. So for the dynamic port range, my starting point is the 49,152, 49,152. And these are the ports, the number of ports or the amount of ports to use. Almost done. Okay, just a couple more steps and then we'll take attendance and we'll call it a night. I know some of you are finished already because you work ahead, but we're gonna talk, since we talk about ping, we did do a little bit of ping, but I want you to experience it in PowerShell, right? Definitely different than command prompt. So we're going to do a test connection command, which is same as ping on the outside with command prompt. So test connection 127.0.0.1, and you can use your IP address if you prefer that. So, but it doesn't give you the statistic in reply like ping, right? Can I ping in PowerShell? Sure. There you go. So you can ping in PowerShell, but when you use test connection, it doesn't really give you this information, like the sent and the receive packets. It just says that it connected, right, to the destination IP, and it associate my loopback with my assigned IP address. You see? Right? Whereas ping, it's only going to be for the destination address that I had put into the command. So we see that the test connection is going to give you a little bit more information on the assigned IP address to the loopback, but it doesn't give you the statistic information. Okay. So you would be able to answer this question. What is the source? How many bytes is sent? So my source, if you look at this, my source is my system name, right? My host name. And the destination is the loopback IP, which is referencing your IP address that was assigned. And then the byte size is on the right. I know it's squeezed into that column and it's hard to see, but we know that it is 32. Okay. Okay. So now what we're gonna do is the last step. You can also check your host name again, but it's listed there, and so we can do host name, right? So if you type host name, it's gonna give you the entire system name. And we have to type it as is. So we're gonna do a test connection. And then desktop 7NGB 18. So what we can do is we can use the test connection, and our target or our destination would also be a computer name. But that is associated with an IP address, you see? So NetBIOS is at work now, right? It's associated that system in the network with the host name. Okay, are we good?
Test connection, the host name.
Yeah, the entire host name after you do the step 22. All right, I'm gonna stop recording so we can do attendance. If you need a little bit more time, you can. Make sure we shut down the computer nicely, the virtual machine, and the system on the outside. Don't forget your USB, right? If you are suspicious about malware, make sure that you scan your device every time that you plug it in when you plug it into your system, okay? As we have an infected system, it's always good to do anti-malware practice. All right. Not too bad, right? When everything works.